standing to attention. Squadron leader?
Still waiting for the
arrival of the president.
Arrival of the president. And after his arrival, the parade will commence.
That's Madame Bushi Sai Kofi.
Indeed.
Yes. Very active under the Kufu administration.
The prison contingent. That's the prison contingent.
Okay. We are awaiting the arrival of President Nana Danka Akufo-Addo, and then I suppose the program officially begins. In the meantime, gentlemen, as you did point out, very calm scenes today from the
almost
Black Star Independence. Scar?
It's a good thing. I mean, like we said earlier, the calmness, the organized, way it's been done and all those things show where we've, reached as a nation. Lloyd was saying something I wanted to pick off, and it was about how we should, look in ourselves and appreciate what, greatness or what potential we have for that, and encourage, those who are coming after to live up to.
That's the army contingent. The army contingent, we are in red.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
I think one of the ways we will do that is to go back in our history, and in reflecting our true history, all of it, okay, we would come to see that indeed, very many years ago, we had great men.
And women.
Who did fantastic things. Okay, one of the tragedies of our history, as it has been narrated in the recent past, that I mean in the past 60 years, is that we have tended to shadow off, okay, or cordon off, some of the really great people, who are part of our history, who have been part of the struggle.
Indeed, in the background. Squadron leader, and this is a contingent
in SEPS.
That's from the customs.
Yes, customs exercise.
Preventive service.
Yes.
Okay. It does.
That's an interesting building in there. There's a kind of room, conference room in there. Fascinating.
Yes. There is actually a meeting room on the second floor.
Yes.
And on January 7th, the commentary for GTV was live.
Oh, you did it
just under. No, we didn't have the pleasure. We sat outside.
Okay.
Of course, these are some of our traditional leaders. And in the previous panel, we talked about this need to keep our tradition of the military, traditions in our culture as well, part of our nation building.
I think critical, that part. I mean, a sense of who we are and our values, our principles, all lies buried in culture. Of course, culture has to be dynamic, respond to circumstances. But usually, whether you essentialize culture or not, there still are some basic building blocks.
Fantastic shot from GTV
Absolutely.
deploying its drones.
Exactly.
Very pleased, because it gives you the bird's eye view.
That's right, yeah.
In trying to get to, this greatness, I was making the point about how we should teach our kids about how centuries ago we had people in this country who were world-class in whatever they did. We had businessmen like Niboni, okay, who had lawyers in Hamburg, who was trading across Europe and was chasing debts in Japan. And in those days they didn't have flights like we did today. So to think that a chief from Ghana, was an international businessman of the highest order. Okay, if you go back to John Kranti, who I wrote about recently, here's a man who stopped the whole of the slave trade because his child had been abducted. He managed to play the British against the French, and he had them treat him like a royal when he was not so much of a royal. He sent his kids to the courts of England and France, and they were treated as royals. So in our history, we've had people who were absolutely great.
Fantastic shot of our great Black Star.
Yes. And I think if we reflect a bit more of those things to our children, they will know that it's in their genes, and that they should not be, faced or intimidated when they go out there and they have to deal with a global village and that kind of thing. Because long ago we were doing it. There was Senseis, of this, country, and many other people who, together with people like Kwame Nkrumah, okay, show what really the average Ghanaian is capable of.
Now the excitement begins obviously from the popular stance. I wonder if indeed the president is arriving.
So I was going to say, Kofi, isn't it then important for us to be measured in the way that we discuss contemporary Ghana. You know, sometimes we tend to give a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. And I think that it's important for us to point out the ills of society, but let's not forget the steps that we've made as a nation, and keep a balanced score sheet so that we know where we are at any time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said the whole morning, we don't have to beat up on ourselves too much. We just have to know the high standards which we, hold ourselves up against.
On the screen,
these
Squadron
are some
Leader.
of the security services senior officers from the Ghanaian forces, and then also from the police, and then the prisons.
Madam Afeyidazi, former GGA president.
So the best and the greatest in Ghana today, again, at the Independence.
But the ceremonial address, does it take a while to put it on?
No,
it doesn't.
No, yes, for the officers.
I mean,
the ones that come with the sword. Yes, you have to, make it look. It must shine.
Yeah.
You have to work on it for it to shine. When you wear it.
Okay.
So it takes.
That's Mr. Jinapo, and that's his wife behind him.
Okay. Deputy Chief of Staff.
Yes.
And of course, Mr. Jinapo is also on the National Planning Committee
for
Ghana 60 years on. So I'm sure he's keeping a very eagle eye on Sarah.
A young man occupying a particularly very, stressful position.
And hopefully in 60 years to come, some people will be sitting here and talking about some great families in Ghana, like the Jinapo family.
Oh, absolutely. It's a good thing. Again,
like the pits in England.
Again, it comes to how we reflect on our history and how we, speak to these things. And I agree with you, we should not be entirely negative. We should just hold ourselves to high standards. But we need to actually hold up some of these families, who have been absolutely fantastic in this whole struggle. And to that extent, I can bring in your family. I mean, without going too much into that detail, we need as a country to put these groups on a pedestal. It's good for our own, mindset as a people that we are great. Out of her family, okay, you have had so many people who have been central to the independence of Ghana, into forming Ghana as a nation. From Nana Selforiata, okay, JB Dankwa, out of the big six, 3 of them come from her house. Okay, and it's not about her in particular. It happens that she's here and she's auspicious as she is in her own right. But our present finance minister, okay, Ken Oforiatta, who happens to be her brother, and Ken's father was finance minister.
Deputy.
Okay. Was deputy finance minister, and he had a particularly colorful, history in our parliament, which should be, spoken about. And if you look in that family again, you have, a president, You
need a whole book.
You did a whole book, the Kufuors, but the point that Victor was making is families. Maybe later on we should have the Jinapo family and then speak about them and how they have contributed to Ghana.
Or the Bampo family.
The Bampo family or the Bento family.
My
grandfather slaved a lot. Yes. So we should not look at these things as a negative. And we should actually hold them up and say, what was it? I tell my students that Nana Selforiata made sure education was a big deal in Achim. And that may be the reason why you have so many Achim people where they are today. And greatness is good, but education is what may leave you a legacy. So when we learn these lessons, we have many auspicious families, the Beho family in, foreign affairs and that kind of thing. We need to find them and actually polish them. Elsewhere, we go and read about people. Okay, and then even when they don't have royalty, the Americans have created their Kennedys and their Rockefellers. We need to find our own and make it work, so then we can
and celebrate the diversity in thought. For example, if you talk about the Jinapo family, we have one on either side. You talk about Otiko, Minister Honorable.
We have the ceremonial ADCs, the Chief of the Defense Staff, and then IGP. Are going to position themselves.
Which means that we're anticipating very soon the arrival.
Yes.
Of course, in the shot you see the Chief of Staff, current Chief
and that's
of Staff.
And our dear friend.
And on the left is the Vice President
of Liberia.
Yes.
And Uncle Bob is resting peacefully.
Oh.
He's looking through the bush.
No, he's resting nicely. I mean, he's at ease.
So Fonya Singbe has been president of Togo since his father passed away in 2005, a good friend of Ghana.
Yes, and also one of those families. I'm not sure that they are always celebrated, but they're definitely a family. Father
David
was president for many years.
The Inspector General of Police, accomplished gentleman.
The Vice President of Liberia apparently had served under Doe as a minister. You know, fascinating record. Yeah. And
so
here he's Vice President.
Counts.
Yes. Experience. And he's been encouraged actually to run after Madam said leave.
Is he now?
So interesting dynamics in Liberian politics. I mean, it's a great nation, Liberia.
I see Dr. Edward Mahama.
Yes. Perennial, you know, presidential candidate and active political for sure.
Right. But picking up on families, I think the Ghana Medical Association would probably take away my membership if I fail to mention that was she your grand aunt or
the first female doctor?
First female Dr. Susan Oforiatta. First female Ghanaian aunt. Okay.
And we should find a place, you know, to really celebrate the Oforiatta family. I think you've paid more than
I think you're doing very well today.
We should make. I'm an honorary member actually. I have to disclose
my own
it.
great grand uncles actually interacted with JB Dankwa. They made cocoa. I always say this. You know, so you're right about families and their role in Ghana. Some not known, some, you know.
I think the way I like to look at it is untold stories. And for me, that's the fascinating opportunity for this year, as the anniversary torch travels from region to region, that you unearth these untold stories. Because they're stories outside of Accra that we don't know about. And are worthy of being told at a higher level.
For example, the Botanical Gardens was where the first key cocoa seedlings were grown. And then there was the boom. And then Ghanaian, you know, the early guys who planted the cocoa and the rest of them actually wanted to form a company that would do the exports directly. And actually got agents in the US. It's a fascinating story.
Actually, it's a simple story, but it's powerful. They actually did it. They arranged their own exports, and you know the traders of the time, you know, used to do it. It was Kwame Nkrumah who tried to organize it, okay, because it became such a big deal. In the process of organizing it and making it easier for the farmers to do, the government's overbearing power basically took it over.
Celebrating our heroes.
I think those
are the three
servicemen.
Servicemen.
I mean, there are untold stories, and there are also a few inaccuracies. Okay, and look, we need to, again, being a mature country now at 60, be able to confront some of these inaccuracies and deal with them. I have been on a personal crusade, at least for the past 6 years, to try and correct what I think is an inaccuracy in our history concerning the whole concept of the blood that was shed for our independence. I think it's important because in certain places people have to fight and shed blood.
Just a second. Okay, so there we saw Cardinal Bertolo.
Yes, indeed.
Are you Catholic?
No, I'm not Catholic.
Yes, he's a special guest sent directly from the Vatican.
From the Vatican.
I was making the point.
And then also, very briefly,